When you hear the word legend, what do you imagine?
Jungle ruins, Norse gods, ancient treasures with powers.
What about a certain time period for a legend?
Old, ancient, like before the gun.
What about World War II?
I've never thought of World War II when I've heard the word legend.
Honestly, most don't. But the last World War was full of legendary events. There were the Night Witches of the Soviet Union, magicians defending London. Even some Nazis were tasked with finding the source for the perfect human race, including believing it might be in Atlantis and trying to find Atlantis. There was also eugenics, trying to explain the perfect race of man, which wasn't so legendary, more atrocious, but still legendary in its own right. And, believe it or not, some Nazis even tried finding powerful ancient artifacts, like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail.
Are you telling me that Indiana Jones actually happened?
No, that is a complete work of fiction. But the Nazis did try searching for it. There are even legends of secret tunnels and bunkers still hidden to this day, filled with the world's treasures that the Nazis had stolen.
I'm suddenly very interested in World War II. Is that what we're talking about today?
Yep, this video was suggested by Jay, actually.
Hey, I know him! Quick, say something witty!
You can't put me on the spot like that!
He's a pretty witty guy. He's going to be pretty disappointed that you couldn't think of something.
Maybe, but I'm still doing the video, so he shouldn't be too disappointed in me, right?
Unless you screw up the video. Then what will you do?
Hopefully have something witty to redeem myself.
So, are we talking about Nazis discovering Atlantis and or the Holy Grail?
Neither. Well, lore lovers, I have a tale to tell you today. The ghost bomber of World War II. And this happened towards the end of the war in Belgium in 1944. To this day, it is still debated on what actually happened. Now, imagine being at this Allied base in Kortenberg, Belgium. You see soldiers come and go, some never to be seen again. Your job is to ensure that those who do return can live to fight another day. And the planes they used and other machinery is in tip-top shape so they can come back. When the fighting has stopped, it is your job to prepare for the next one. Some planes are easier to repair than others, especially depending on the damage, but not many were like this. And off in the distance, you see it. An American B-17G bomber coming towards you, flying slightly off kilter. Because of this, you can tell that at least some of the crew is wounded. Now, these planes weigh over 35,000 pounds, and this one is plummeting towards you. But you and others notice the landing gear has come down. It's preparing to land. The plane barely hits the top of 3 anti-aircraft guns before slamming into the ground so hard it bounces back up into the air. Because of the rough landing, it's gone off kilter even more. A wing has crashed into the ground, and the propellers are chopping into the earth. This wasn't the best landing, but it could have definitely been worse. Now you just need for the crew to come out of the ship, and you can start your repairs and make sure everybody's okay. And, with how the landing was, probably everybody on board will need to be tended to. Now, nobody was expecting this plane. There was no emergency call for its arrival or anything. So nobody was prepared for this. And you and others just stand there, waiting. Nobody is coming out of the plane. The engines are still going, and minute after minute, there's nothing. What should you do? Run towards an unannounced ship with nobody coming out of it and hoping it's not a trap? Wait for them to eventually come out and see if anybody died from you waiting? What if they were all wounded and couldn't get out? Are you just going to let them die there because you're worried of a trap? Well, after 20 minutes, British Major John V. Crisp finally decided to investigate. This standoff was lasting quite some time already, and honestly, the blaring of the engines was getting annoying. So, cautiously, Major Crisp approached the plane. Now, the Major wasn't an airman, so that meant he didn't know quite what he was looking for. He investigated the exterior first, going around it several times, mostly because he couldn't find the opening to the plane. He finally found it and entered the plane, expecting to find the gruesome remains of what was left of the crew. But something more eerie was in that ship. Something he couldn't explain. Nothing. There was not a soul on board. There was half-eaten chocolate bars, showing that somebody was on there. But all the parachute packs were accounted for, all 12 of them on a 10-man crew. What happened to the crew? How did the plane get here? It was almost as if the entire crew just vanished. Who was the crew? Where were they now? If there was one? What's stranger still is the aircraft didn't even have a name to it like all the other American ships did. And how did this plane land without a soul on board to guide it home? Major Crisp found his way to the cockpit and turned off the engines. He also found a logbook with chicken scratches all over he could barely read. That wasn't much help. And news soon spread of this peculiar ghost plane. The press even dubbed it the Phantom Fortress. With this much publicity, high-ranking officials wanted answers fast, so an investigation was immediately opened. The investigators finally found the serial number for the plane and discovered that it took off in East Anglia, England, with a crew of 10 men. More questions came after discovering this. Most importantly, what happened to the crew? Are they alive? The bomb cover for this plane was removed, meaning that it was on a bomb run. And on a bomb run, they don't usually land until their mission is complete. And the hull was still full of bombs. And the 12 parachute packs were still on board, so it wasn't likely that the 10 men jumped out. Although that was the most logical conclusion, as illogical as it was. With all the crew members jumping out with no parachute, it was likely nobody survived, let alone we would ever be able to find their bodies. But, by sheer luck, we found the crew. All 10 of them, alive and well. They had arrived at a different airbase in Belgium. So now the question was, how did they get there? What happened? Why did they leave the plane? It turns out, as investigators suspected, the Americans were on a bombing run to Germany. During the last days of the war, the Allied forces continued to bomb Germany day and night. The British bombed during the night, and the Americans bombed the more high-profile targets during the day. And the Phantom Fortress was going to bomb the oil field in Merseburg, Germany. Lieutenant Harold R. de Bolt was the pilot. And he wasn't a novice either. He knew what he was doing. He claimed that everything was fine while getting to the target. However, once there, everything started to go wrong. The plane couldn't maintain altitude. While it was descending, the Germans shot at him, hitting them twice. One of the hits was a direct hit to the bomb bay. It was a miracle none of the bombs exploded right there. De Bolt claimed the other shot hit one of the 4 engines on the plane. Investigators thought this strange since eyewitnesses at the Phantom Fortress landing said that all 4 engines were working. With turbulent weather as a storm was forming, a hole in the bomb bay and an engine out, de Bolt decided to abandon the mission and retreat. But the plane kept descending, so he ordered the crew to loose everything in the cargo. And even after they did that, the plane still fell. Knowing they wouldn't make it back to England in this condition, de Bolt set a course for Brussels, right when the second engine went out. The plane kept descending, so de Bolt decided to abandon ship. He was the last to leave, setting the plane to autopilot as he did so. Now, there had been reports of unmanned ships before during the war, ghost ships even, but a plane with 2 engines didn't stand a chance of telling that tale. Yet the Phantom Fortress flew for miles, and although the landing was rocky, landed safely at an Allied base. Pilots then and today have even said de Bolt made the right choice. The plane was going down. He had to think of the welfare of his crew. DeBolt believed the plane would crash several miles ahead of them and didn't think it would ever land safely at a base. All of this seemed impossible. They jumped out of the plane without any parachutes. The plane landed itself. How is any of this possible? Yet eyewitnesses say it was. But eyewitnesses did give conflicting accounts. Even DeBolt's crew gave different stories, so nothing could actually be corroborated. Some of the crew members said that only one engine was shot while another just stopped working. Others claimed both were shot. However, all accounts from the eyewitnesses of the Phantom Fortress's landing said all 4 engines were working. However, most believe this discrepancy is because Crisp and his men weren't airmen, so they couldn't really tell for sure if all 4 engines were working or not. But why didn't the crew use parachutes? They were right there. Another theory to explain this is that the parachute packs were still there, but the crew took the parachutes from the pack and used those. This was never confirmed, so we can never say one way or the other if the parachute packs actually still held the actual parachutes in them. So we'll never know how the crew of the Phantom Fortress made it onto the ground safely. World War II lasted for 6 years. With so many battles spanning such a large expanse, not every incident was properly investigated. And after the war ended, people focused on catching war criminals and rebuilding, not investigating ghost ships. So, it's likely we'll never know what truly happened aboard the Phantom Fortress, or as it's also called, the Ghost Bomber of World War II. The best case scenario happened to both crew and plane, and we'll never know how or why it happened. What happened in between is as good as your guess as is mine. And this will forever be a mystery that haunts World War II.
They were probably on a covert mission, trying to save the Ark of the Covenant from Nazis who had stolen it. And that's when they got attacked. The power of the Ark put the crew members on the ground safely, and then landed the plane.
Then what happened to the Ark?
Nazis stole it?
That makes no sense.
Well, maybe DeBolt had it himself, and they had to come up with a quick story, and he wasn't very creative. Governments could cover that up, right? Though I'm sure they would never do something as bad as that, or as shady as maybe rewriting documents or misplacing some so Nazi scientists could become American citizens.
What? No, of course not. Don't be silly. That's so silly it deserves a ridiculous name, like Project Paperclip or something.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? That would have never happened.
Well, lore lovers, what do you think? What happened on the Phantom Fortress? How could the crew survive jumping out of the plane without a parachute? Or did they have the parachute? And if so, why didn't they take the whole thing? How did the plane manage to survive flying so many miles and landing safely at an Ally base? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon to be alerted for when the next video becomes available. Also, quick shout out to Jay for suggesting this video. The mysteries revolving around the Ghost Bomber of World War II, and other legends and mysteries in this time period, will likely never be solved. And sadly, it will only be a glimmer within the annals of human mythos and history, as the atrocities of the war itself took center stage, and rightfully so. Be sure to share this video so others can learn about the Ghost Bomber of World War II. And until next time, lore lovers, stay safe and off of airfields.